Alright, so you successfully made it through my first video. You have a good idea of what you want for an M1 Garand. Visually on the outside, it looks fine. It's exactly what you want. But how do you make sure it's in good mechanical working order? Well, first off, you're going to have to disassemble it. Honestly, if you're at a gun shop like, for example, the ammo box in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, where they have a sign hanging up, if you dry fire the firearm, you bought it, and if you disassemble it, I'll kill you. They sell military surplus firearms. I don't have any idea how they expect you to ensure you're getting a good product if you're not allowed to take it apart. Go to a different shop. You have to be able to take apart your M1 Garand to check for a couple of different things. The biggest deal with the M1 Garands is they're made for the military ammo, the M2 ball. I believe, yeah, M2 ball. And if somebody were to just throw standard ammunition in this without upgrading at first, they can cause some serious damage. They can bend the op rod, they can crack or break the receiver. You can convert these over, which is what you're going to want to do if you're a shooter, not a collector, because you're going to want to be able to run normal ammunition. Yeah, right now M2 ball is plentiful, and you can get AP ammo, which is a huge bonus. But the point is, you still want to be able to run, just standard 30-06 ammo. What you'll be doing is taking out this plug and replacing it, and you start with the biggest gas port because it'll have different set screws and it vents off gas. You start with the biggest one when you find your ammunition, run a single round, shoot it. It's probably going to short stroke, put in the next size smaller, shoot it, and then eventually once it locks all the way to the rear, that's the size you're going to want to use. So you got it disassembled. These come with a polished bore and chamber. They're not chrome lined, but apparently from what I'm gathering, if it does not have a shiny bore, stay away from it because it means the barrel's been refinished, and if it's not polished, I guess they have cycling issues. You want to keep an eye on that. Next, look at your op rod. Don't panic when you pull this out. This naturally has a bend to it. You're going to have to compare it with images on Google and find out what an actual bent op rod looks like so you can pay attention to it and what's normal. Check out the end here. Make sure there's no cracking, no chipping. Make sure it's not deformed at all. I can kind of feel a ledge on there. This one I would want to pull up my caliper and check the size. I'm editing my video right now and I kind of feel like I came off wrong. When I'm using the caliper, it's more of a demonstration just to show you to use it. But to be totally honest, if this rifle for example, I can tell just by a rough glance it's good to go. If I was actually questioning if something was out of spec or not, I would just pass that rifle by. You're just going to throw your caliper on there. Check the size, compare it with Google numbers, which this one is serviceable, and make sure it's still serviceable. Then in the back here, look for any cracking or deformation. This one does have deformation right there. It's also got quite a bit of wear on the top. Again, I'm going to want to pull up my caliper on this particular rifle and check it and make sure it's within spec. If there's anything really bad, you might want to get a different op rod or just pass that rifle by. You can actually feel the deformation right here on the back. There's a little ledge. I don't know if you can hear it. But it's grabbing my finger. Also check this part right here and this part right here for damage, because if this is assembled wrong, instead of floating back, you'll know if it's assembled right because you'll be able to push down. It'll slam into there. Say they put it together like this. It just slams into there. This doesn't lift up. This does have damage on here from that exact problem happening, but it doesn't look major. On this particular rifle, I don't think it would be a problem. But definitely check and make sure they didn't cause any structural damage, assembling it wrong and then slamming the bolt back trying to figure out why it's not working. Check out your spring. You can see some shiny spots from where it was hitting that exact spot. Make sure it's not too bad. Make sure there isn't huge cuts in your spring. Just kind of look over it. Also check and make sure this isn't bent, because if it's assembled wrong, go like this, they panic, rip the bolt back, and bend this part right here. That's how it should work. Then your bolt, just like an AK. You want to check your bolt lugs, look for any damage or deformation. This one... it's awfully shiny right there, so again, I'd want to pull out my caliper, check the spec. Make sure your firing pin moves in and out freely. This one's kind of sticky, so I'd clean it, and if it doesn't free it up, then I'd be looking for probably a new bolt or just passing the rifle by. Make sure your firing pin hole isn't oblonged or oversized. And check on your rear lugs, make sure this isn't peened over. Look for any unusual wear, because there's enough of these rifles still available where you don't have to jump on one that's got warning bells. If there's warning bells, just pass it by. You're looking for one you can shoot. Check your receiver, especially right here on the front where the op rod would slam into it. Again, check your barrel. Just kind of go over it. Take your time. You don't need to rush into this purchase. Just take your time, take your time, take your time. Go over each individual parts. Make sure the rear sight can move. Make sure it's not seized into place. Make sure there's no damage on your front sight ears. Make sure your front sight is intact. If you got the gauges, great. Put them in there. Check your bore, check your throat. But if you don't, at least, like, hold this up to the light. Make sure the rifling looks good. Make sure there's no extreme pitting inside the barrel. If you have to, ask the gun store person to run a bore snake through it. Then it'll be nice and shiny. You'll be able to see all the rifling. Put a flashlight on this end, or even just stick a white card in there. You'll be able to see the rifling and inspect it. Look for any unusual damage. Check your crown out. Make sure it doesn't have any dings in it. The crown is especially important for accuracy. If there's any dings or anything in here at all, this rifle is going to be incredibly inaccurate. You could always get it recrowned, but we're looking for shooter rifles here. Oh, and they do sell M1 Garand barrels now that are chrome line, so if you did want to upgrade to one, you could. But, I mean, it didn't originally come with one. Unless you for sure are replacing your barrel, which then, you have a couple different options. You could throw on like a National Match barrel, you could go with like a chrome line barrel. Really, since this is a shooter and we're not really looking for like period correct, we're looking for something that runs mechanically sound and it's fun to shoot, you just kind of gotta wing it with the barrel. See what serves your taste the best. Look over the Springer. Sorry, I can't talk. Look over the trigger assembly. Make sure that spring is good. Make sure the trigger functions properly. Releases, on releases, catches again. If this were to not catch on the back, or if this is wore out, this rifle could slam fire. Now that's different from like my shotgun was slam firing. If this slam fires, this can totally detonate a round out of battery. That's going to cause some serious problems, probably some physical harm to you too. So make sure your trigger is working fine. Make sure the spring doesn't have any cracking in it. Look for deformation on your hammer catch. Make sure that's not wore out. Make sure it locks into place very positively. Hold the trigger, push the hammer down again. Make sure it's got a good click. Make sure there's plenty of surface area holding the hammer. Then go over the stock and look at the inside of it. Make sure there's not any splits all the way through. Yeah, if there is a split, you can fix it. It's actually pretty easy to fix, but still, we're trying to get the best value here. So look for any splits. Look for any places where somebody did glue it. Look at your forend very closely. Make sure there's no splits or any unusual damage in here. If there's a small crack or something, that's fine. You can glue it if you want to put in that work. But ideally, we're trying to get the best value here. See how dirty it is? Kind of get a feel for how used this rifle is. This has, because originally I did a 90, but it wasn't very strong, so I did a cut in here to help give it strength. But still, check this out, look for any fracturing. Any fracturing, that's a no-go. Pass that rifle by. Last thing, function check it. When you pull the bolt back to the rear, does it lock? Does the shell lifter move? Does the safety go on and off? Does the hammer drop? But anyways, that's just kind of a rough overview of how everything, or not how everything works, what you're going to be looking for to get a good idea if the rifle is mechanically sound, to make sure it's even worth buying. Watch plenty of tutorials on how to take these rifles apart. They look complicated, especially if you don't know what you're doing. But once you've watched a couple of videos and you got a good idea of how to do it, it's a piece of cake. Oh, check your bolt, obviously. Make sure there's no cracking or any unusual wear. But thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out my Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe.